The scorching desert sun blazed down on a small, forgotten town, its dusty streets eerily silent. Once vibrant with life, the town now trembled under the iron grip of a ruthless biker gang. They ruled with fear, extorting protection money from the helpless locals. Hope seemed like a distant memory, until a mysterious visitor arrived. Elon Musk, a man known for transforming the impossible into reality, sought nothing more than a quiet escape. But as he witnessed the desperation of the townsfolk and the gang's unchecked tyranny, a spark ignited within him. What could one man do against such overwhelming odds? In a race against time, Elon must harness his ingenuity, transform junk into a weapon of hope, and face the gang in a high-stakes duel for the soul of the town. Will brilliance and determination triumph over brute force? Or will the desert claim yet another victim? This is a story of courage, creativity, and the extraordinary power of human resolve. Stick around to witness a tale of brains versus brawn, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling narratives like this. The tires of a sleek electric car kicked up a cloud of dust as it rolled into the desolate town. Elon Musk, seeking refuge from the chaos of his high-profile life, had stumbled upon this remote outpost. It was the kind of place where time seemed to stand still, rusting signs, peeling paint, and the faint sound of a wind chime echoing through the emptiness. But something was off. The few townsfolk he saw moved with their heads down, shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact. Children peeked nervously from behind cracked window panes. The oppressive silence spoke louder than words. Fear had gripped this town. Stopping at a small cafe for water, Elon overheard hushed voices. The name, Steel Jack, was whispered with dread. A biker gang leader who had taken over the town, forcing the residents to pay for their safety. Those who couldn't pay faced the gang's wrath. Elon leaned back in his chair, his mind already turning. He wasn't one to interfere, but the weight of injustice gnawed at him. The sharp crack of a motorcycle's engine shattered his thoughts, and he turned to see three gang members roaring into the street, their faces twisted into cruel grins. "They're here," someone muttered. Elon sipped his water, his eyes narrowing as he watched the scene unfold. He didn't know it yet, but his quiet retreat was about to turn into a fight for freedom. The gang's arrival was like a storm sweeping through the fragile peace of the town. Engines roared, dust swirled, and the gang members dismounted with an air of dominance. Their leader wasn't with them this time, but it didn't matter. These men carried out his orders without question. "Payment time, folks," one of them barked, his voice echoing off the weathered buildings. The townspeople, eyes cast downward, shuffled toward the gang. Mothers clutched their children tightly, while shopkeepers hesitated before handing over their meager earnings. A frail elderly man, visibly trembling, stepped forward with shaking hands, offering a small bundle of cash. "This is it," sneered a gang member, snatching the money. "You think this is enough to keep your shop standing?" With a violent shove, he sent the old man sprawling to the ground. Elon, standing in the shadow of the cafe's awning, watched intently. His jaw tightened as he took in the scene. A lifetime of innovation had taught him to focus on solving problems, but this was a different kind of problem, a human one. His mind raced, already dissecting what he could do to change this balance of power. As the gang collected their spoils and roared off, a middle-aged woman approached Elon cautiously. Her face bore lines of hardship, her eyes a mix of fear and pleading. "Sir, you don't look like you're from here," she said, her voice low but firm. "But if there's anything you can do to help us, we'd be grateful." Elon didn't reply immediately, his gaze still fixed on the trail of dust left by the motorcycles. Then, with quiet determination, he said, "Show me what's left in that old garage down the street." The garage was a forgotten relic of the town's better days. Rusted tools hung crookedly on the walls, and broken machinery sat scattered on the dirt floor. The air was thick with the smell of oil and neglect. Elon stepped inside, his sharp eyes scanning every corner, taking in the chaos like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "This place hasn't been used in years," the woman explained, trailing behind him. "After the gang took over, we stopped fixing things. What was the point?" Her voice was tinged with resignation. but also a faint glimmer of hope as she watched Elon examine the tools and parts. "This'll do," Elon said simply, picking up a rusty wrench. He crouched down to inspect a discarded bike frame, his fingers tracing its jagged edges. "I've built rockets with less," he murmured, almost to himself. Word began to spread through the town like wildfire. A stranger was planning to take on the gang. As curious faces peeked into the garage, Elon's focus never wavered. He sketched designs on a scrap of cardboard, muttering equations under his breath. But not everyone was optimistic. "You're going to race them?" An older man scoffed, leaning against the doorframe. "They've got power, speed, and no mercy. What do you have?" "Ingenuity," Elon replied, holding up a battered engine part with a faint smile. "And a plan?" He turned to the townspeople, his tone shifting from quiet to resolute. "I'll need your help. Gather every piece of scrap metal, every bolt, and every bit of wire you can find. Together, we'll build something they won't see coming." For the first time in years, the town felt a spark of hope. The battle for their freedom had begun. The garage, once silent and forgotten, was now buzzing with activity. Townsfolk carried in piles of scrap metal, old bike parts, and anything remotely useful they could find. Buckets of bolts and washers clattered onto the floor, and a young boy dragged in a heavy, rusted engine part with a determined look on his face. Elon stood at the center of it all, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp, directing the chaos like a maestro conducting an orchestra. "Bring that chain over here," Elon said, pointing toward the workbench. "And someone find me a blowtorch. This thing's going to need some serious reinforcement." The townspeople watched in awe as he began to work, transforming the junk into something remarkable. Sparks flew as Elon welded broken parts together, his focus unwavering. Each piece seemed to fit into place as though it had always been meant to. "This frame is too weak for the terrain," he muttered, thinking aloud. "We'll reinforce it with steel rods. Lightweight, but durable." "You've done this before?" asked a teenager, his voice tinged with curiosity. "Not exactly," Elon replied with a grin, tightening a bolt. "But engineering is just problem solving, and I've solved a few problems in my time." Moments of humor lightened the mood. When a gear snapped in half, Elon quipped, "Quality manufacturing," prompting a ripple of laughter. The garage that once held only despair now pulsed with hope and camaraderie. By nightfall, the skeleton of the bike began to take shape. It wasn't much to look at yet, but it was a testament to resilience and ingenuity. For the first time, the townspeople could envision what they thought impossible, a chance to stand up to the gang and take back their town. The first test didn't go as planned. As the makeshift bike sputtered to life, a loud clang echoed through the garage, followed by a puff of smoke from the engine. Elon quickly shut it down, unfazed. "That's why we test," he said calmly, wiping his hands on a rag. A small crowd had gathered outside the garage, their eyes fixed on the bike. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, an amalgamation of scrap metal and spare parts, held together by bolts, welds, and an unyielding belief that it could work. Elon crouched by the bike, tracing a finger along the engine casing. "The fuel line's clogged," he said. "We'll clear it, and I want to tweak the suspension. It's too rigid for those dunes." The townspeople chipped in wherever they could. A retired mechanic adjusted the chain tension while a teenage girl, her hands smudged with grease, tested the throttle. "It's responsive, but the grip's loose," she noted, handing it back to Elon. As the fixes continued, doubts began to creep in among the crowd. "What if it doesn't work?" someone whispered. "What if it breaks down during the race?" Elon overheard and turned to face them. "Every failure teaches us something. Every adjustment gets us closer to success. Trust me, we'll get this right." By the time the engine roared to life again, the sound was smoother, stronger. Elon took the bike for a spin outside, kicking up dust as he tested its agility on the uneven terrain. When he returned, his grin said it all. "It's not perfect," he admitted, "but it'll do the job." The murmurs of doubt began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of belief. If anyone could pull this off, it was him. As dawn broke over the desert, the garage became a hive of concentrated effort. The bike, though crude in appearance, was nearly complete. Elon worked with precision, tightening bolts and calibrating the engine, while the townspeople watched with a mix of awe and anticipation. "We're almost there," Elon said, stepping back to inspect his creation. The bike gleamed under the soft morning light, a patchwork of salvage parts transformed into something extraordinary. The final challenge was to enhance its performance for the rugged terrain. "We need stability and speed," Elon mused, his mind racing. He added a set of reinforced shock absorbers scavenged from an old truck. The tires, now wrapped in layers of durable rubber, were designed to grip the loose desert sand. The finishing touch was a small, hand-painted emblem on the bike's side, a phoenix rising from flames, drawn by a young girl from the town. "It means hope," she said shyly, as Elon gave her a rare smile. With the bike ready, Elon turned to the townspeople who had gathered around him. "This isn't just about the race," he said, his voice steady. "It's about standing up for what's right. Win or lose, we show them we won't be bullied anymore." The crowd erupted into quiet cheers, their resolve growing stronger. Even the skeptics felt a shift in the air, a sense that, against all odds, they had a chance. Elon mounted the bike, testing the throttle one last time. The engine growled, steady and strong, as if it were ready for battle. "Let's win this thing," he said with a nod, before revving the engine and taking the bike outside. The stage was set. The race was about to begin. The crowd gathered on the outskirts of the desert, a mix of hope and fear etched on their faces. The morning sun blazed over the arid expanse, casting long shadows on the rugged terrain where the race would unfold. The gang, confident and cocky, lined up at the starting point, their leader Steeljack at the forefront. His bike, a monstrous machine of polished chrome and raw power, roared like a beast eager for the hunt. Elon pulled up beside him on his makeshift creation, its patchwork frame standing in stark contrast. The gang burst into mocking laughter. "You're joking, right?" Steeljack sneered, revving his engine. "That heap of scrap won't last 5 minutes out here." Elon's calm gaze met Jack's fiery glare. "We'll see," he replied coolly, tightening his grip on the handlebars. The referee, a reluctant townsperson under the gang's thumb, raised a flag and shouted the rules, first to the abandoned radio tower and back winds. No rules in between. His voice quavered as he dropped the flag. The bikes roared to life, kicking up clouds of sand as the racers tore across the desert. Steeljack surged ahead immediately, his raw horsepower dominating the flat terrain. But Elon didn't flinch. His focus was razor-sharp, his strategy unfolding in his mind like a blueprint. The terrain grew harsher, shifting from smooth sand to jagged rocks and unpredictable dunes. Elon's bike, engineered for agility, began to show its worth. While the gang's heavier machines struggled to maintain balance on uneven ground, Elon maneuvered with precision, weaving through obstacles with ease. The townspeople held their breath as the race began in earnest. This wasn't just a battle of speed. It was a test of ingenuity and courage. As the racers sped deeper into the desert, the terrain became treacherous. The once flat expanse gave way to towering dunes and sharp ridges. Steeljack and his gang relied on their powerful engines to plow through, but their bulky bikes struggled with the unpredictable sand. Elon, however, had anticipated this. His lightweight, reinforced frame glided over the dunes, while his custom tires provided superior traction. As he crested a steep hill, he noticed Steeljack's lead shrinking. The gang leader's machine roared and sputtered as it dug into the loose sand. Behind Elon, chaos erupted. A gang member lost control on a rocky slope, his bike flipping over in a cloud of dust. Another hit a hidden crevice, thrown violently from his seat. Elon's analytical mind worked quickly, scanning the terrain for the best paths. Then came the next challenge, a dried-out riverbed filled with jagged rocks and deep cracks. Steeljack was the first to reach it, his bike bouncing wildly as he powered through, taking the risk head-on. Elon slowed slightly, calculating his approach. He leaned into his bike, expertly steering it around the worst of the obstacles. The suspension he had reinforced absorbed the shocks, allowing him to maintain control. The crowd watching from afar erupted in cheers as Elon began to close the gap on Jack. Steeljack glanced over his shoulder, his grin fading as he saw Elon gaining ground. "Impossible," he growled, revving his engine harder. Elon remained focused, unbothered by the growing tension. For him, this wasn't just a race. It was a puzzle, and every obstacle was another piece falling into place. The real battle was yet to come, but Elon had already proven one thing. Raw power was no match for precision and ingenuity. The racers approached the halfway mark, the abandoned radio tower perched atop a rocky plateau. Steel Jack maintained a slim lead, his bike's engine roaring as he powered through the rough terrain. Elon, calm and calculating, studied the next stretch, a narrow path winding up to the tower, littered with jagged rocks and sudden drops. As Steel Jack reached the incline, his impatience became his downfall. He gunned his engine, forcing his bike to barrel up the path recklessly. The gang leader's brute force approach kicked up clouds of dust and loose rocks, creating chaos for anyone behind him. Elon saw an opportunity. He slowed slightly, letting the dust settle, and analyzed the terrain with precision. "Take the inside curve," he muttered to himself, his sharp instincts guiding his every move. As the path narrowed, Steel Jack's heavy bike began to falter. The steep incline and uneven surface pushed his machine to its limits, causing him to skid dangerously close to the edge. Elon, meanwhile, leaned into his bike, using its agility to his advantage. His reinforced suspension and carefully tuned engine carried him smoothly past the obstacles, gaining him valuable ground. Near the top of the hill, Elon made his move. He spotted a shortcut, a nearly hidden gap between two boulders. It was a risky maneuver, requiring pinpoint accuracy, but Elon didn't hesitate. With a swift turn, he veered off the main path, his bike gliding through the narrow passage. The crowd gasped as Elon emerged ahead of Steel Jack, his tactical brilliance on full display. For the first time in the race, the gang leader looked rattled. Elon's unorthodox methods were rewriting the rules, and the balance of power had begun to shift. The final stretch of the race loomed ahead, a perilous flatland dotted with scattered boulders and treacherous patches of quicksand. Steel Jack, now neck and neck with Elon, snarled as he pushed his bike to its absolute limit. The deafening roar of his engine echoed across the desert, a stark contrast to Elon's quieter, efficient machine. Desperate to regain dominance, Steel Jack tried to force Elon off course. He swerved aggressively, his larger bike grazing Elon's handlebars. The townspeople watching from a distance held their breath as the two riders danced dangerously close to disaster. But Elon didn't waver. He leaned into his bike, anticipating Jack's next move. When the gang leader tried another swerve, Elon executed a sharp countermaneuver, sending Jack momentarily off balance. It was a small victory, but enough to give Elon a crucial edge. Ahead, the quicksand traps came into view, nearly invisible under the blazing sun. Jack, blinded by rage and determination, charged forward recklessly. His front wheel sank into the shifting sands, slowing him just enough for Elon to act. With precision, Elon steered around the traps, sticking to the edge of the solid ground. His earlier modifications, the lightweight frame and reinforced tires, proved invaluable as he glided through the obstacles with ease. Steel Jack's frustration boiled over. He pushed his bike harder, but his brute force tactics only caused more mistakes. As the finish line drew near, Elon surged ahead, his bike cutting through the desert like an arrow. The townspeople erupted in cheers as Elon crossed the finish line, triumphant. Steel Jack arrived moments later, his defeat etched into his scowling face. The race was over, and with it, the gang's reign of terror. The moment Elon crossed the finish line, the desert erupted with cheers and applause. The townspeople, who had lived in fear for so long, were finally free. Children ran through the streets, shouting in joy, while adults clapped each other on the back, their faces glowing with relief and gratitude. Steel Jack dismounted his stalled bike, his once confident smirk replaced by a scowl of defeat. His gang members, now scattered and disheveled, looked to their leader for guidance, but he had none to offer. Elon, still seated on his makeshift bike, met Jack's glare with quiet resolve. "Your time here is over," Elon said simply, his words carrying the weight of finality. Jack growled, but knew he had lost more than the race. He had lost his grip on the town. With a begrudging nod, he signaled to his gang, and one by one, they roared away on their bikes, leaving only a trail of dust behind. The townspeople swarmed around Elon, their hero. The woman who had first approached him clutched his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Elon dismounted the bike and looked at the crowd. "This victory isn't just mine," he said. "It's yours. You stood up to fear and reclaimed your freedom. Don't let anyone take that from you again." The people cheered louder, their spirits soaring. For the first time in years, the town felt alive again. As the celebrations continued, Elon stepped away from the crowd, finding a quiet spot by the edge of town. The sun was setting, casting the desert in hues of orange and gold. He glanced back at the townspeople, now united and vibrant, their joy filling the air. The woman who had first sought his help approached him again, this time with a small group of townsfolk. "You could stay," she said softly. "We could use someone like you." Elon smiled faintly, but shook his head. "My work here is done. This town doesn't need me anymore. It has you, all of you, to keep it strong." He turned to the bike. Now more than just a machine, it was a symbol of resilience and ingenuity. He patted the seat affectionately before addressing the crowd that had gathered once more. "Remember this moment," he said, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "You didn't just win a race. You proved that courage, creativity, and unity can overcome anything. The power to protect this town is already in your hands. Never forget that." With that, Elon mounted his electric car, the engine humming softly. The townspeople waved and cheered as he drove away, his figure fading into the horizon. As the dust settled, the town stood stronger than ever. They had faced fear, embraced hope, and discovered that even the smallest community could stand tall when united. The sun set behind the desert town, but the echoes of triumph lingered in the air. The story of Elon Musk and the desert duel wasn't just about a race. It was a testament to innovation, courage, and the power of unity. It was a reminder that even against overwhelming odds, determination and ingenuity can forge a path to victory. As the dust settled on this chapter, it left us with a question. What would you do in the face of adversity? Would you stand tall, think outside the box, and find a way to overcome? If this story inspired you, entertained you, or sparked your imagination, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part of Elon's journey? Did his resourcefulness resonate with you? And if you enjoy thrilling narratives that combine action, inspiration, and a touch of the extraordinary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest stories. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of more adventures, tales of resilience, and stories that challenge the impossible. Together, let's celebrate the power of creativity, courage, and community. What's next? You'll have to stick around to find out. Until then, stay inspired, stay bold, and never stop chasing the extraordinary. Subscribe for more inspiring stories, and join us on the journey to explore the unimaginable.